Good morning, bon matin.
Good morning.
The COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect Canadians from coast to coast. More than 25,000 Canadians have fallen sick, and sadly, hundreds of families have lost loved ones. Almost 6 million people have lost their jobs, and the businesses that are still open are worried about how they are going to hang on. Our entire Conservative caucus is working hard to help get them the support they need as quickly as possible. Nous présentons des solutions constructives.
We have proposed a number of constructive solutions, such as rebating the GST to small businesses that collected it in the last year, temporary allowing owner-operators to become wage-earning employees so that they can qualify for the wage subsidy, and lifting the $40,000 cap on the Canada Emergency Business Account that banks and credit unions are now delivering, so that businesses can borrow the cash needed to pay their employees now and pay it back once CRA deposits their wage subsidy into their accounts.
We have proposed a number of constructive solutions, such as rebating the GST to small businesses who have collected it over the past year, temporarily allowing owner-operators to become wage-earning employees so that they qualify for the wage subsidy, and lifting the $40,000 cap on the Canada Emergency Business Account that banks and credit unions are now delivering, so that businesses can borrow the cash needed to pay their employees now and pay it back once the CRA deposits their wage subsidy in their accounts. I look forward to the government implementing our suggestions, but there's still more work to do. The House of Commons will continue to resume normal sittings on April 20th, unless an agreement is reached between all the parties to modify the sitting calendar. As I made clear in my letter to the Prime Minister last night, such an agreement must include regular opportunities for members of Parliament to question him as we would normally during question period. It must also include regular opportunities for members of Parliament to question ministers in the House of Commons on all aspects of the government's response to COVID-19.
Canadians are greatly concerned by the present situation. New government documents and security reports paint a concerning picture about how the government reacted to the pandemic in the early days and its lack of preparedness.
New government documents and security reports paint a concerning picture about how the government reacted to the pandemic in the early days and its lack of preparedness. Our borders remained open, even as other countries closed theirs to protect the health and safety of their citizens. Instead of stockpiling medical supplies, as the World Health Organization told countries to prepare for a possible outbreak, this government sent thousands of masks, gloves, and other critical equipment overseas. Canadians were repeatedly told that the public health risk was low. Strict public health measures were brought in just a few days later. The Prime Minister has now issued warnings regarding a second and possibly a third wave of COVID-19. Canadians must be assured that the government has a plan to get ahead of those waves and eventually get our economy back on track.
As we have demonstrated during the last two sittings of Parliament, members of Parliament can meet in a responsible manner while respecting public health advice. Continued in-person sittings have allowed opposition parties to debate, discuss, question, and ultimately improve the government's legislation. They're an essential part of our democratic process and ensure better results for Canadians.
As we have demonstrated during the last two sittings of Parliament, members of Parliament can meet in a responsible manner while respecting public health advice. Continued in-person sittings have allowed opposition parties to debate, discuss, question, and ultimately improve the government's response to this pandemic. They are an essential part of of our democratic process and ensure better results for all Canadians. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Happy to take
Thank you very much.
We'll now start the question period. As usual, one question, one follow-up. Comme d'habitude, une question de suivi. On va commencer avec les questions au téléphone.
We're going to start with questions from the phone.
Operator on the line, do we have any question on the phone?
Thank you. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. Appuyez sur étoile 1 pour poser une question. Our first question is from Mélanie Marquis de La Presse. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Scheer, pourriez-vous
Mr. Scheer,
nous expliquer
can you tell us
dans quel contexte s'est fait le déplacement que vous avez fait en avion
when you traveled by plane
avec votre
with your
femme
family
ainsi que vos 5 enfants
and your 5 children? What was the context around this?
Nous étions à Regina.
Answer, we were in Regina
dans les premiers jours d'en mars.
During the first few days of March.
De mars.
For the March break.
Et nous avons eu une décision de prendre
and we decided
voyager par trois différents aéroports
through 3 different airports
être ici pour la séance
to be here
for
the parliamentary sitting
samedi passé,
last Saturday.
Ou de prendre une vol avec seulement 2 autres
or we had
personnes.
to choose between a flight with other people.
Et nous avons
we did decide to do that and took measures to reduce interactions with others.
Et maintenant, je serai ici à Ottawa
and now
pour
I'm here in Ottawa.
Le reste de la session.
I will be here for the rest of the session.
Merci. Juste en suivi, pensez-vous
As a
avoir donc respecté les directives en matière de santé publique?
Public health
directives
and also with respect to the borders?
L'entente qui a été
We're renegotiating the agreement between Ottawa and Washington. What should we do? Extend the border closure?
Oui, alors, comme j'ai dit,
Answer, as I
nous avons
said,
eu un choix
we had a choice to make.
D'avoir une situation où moi-même va voyager de
Either
Regina
myself,
à Ottawa
I would travel
pour
back and
le
forth
reste
between
de la
Regina and
session,
Ottawa
ou
every
de
week for the rest of the
déplacer
parliamentary session, or
famille
I could
ici à
stay with
Ottawa
my family
pour,
here in Ottawa
juste que la fin de juin.
until
Alors,
the end of the month of June.
De
And
prendre
we
des mesures
decided to take measures to
interactions avec
reduce
seulement les
our
2 autres
interactions
passagers,
with the 2 other
au lieu de
passengers on the
passer,
plane,
vers 3
rather than
aéroports
going through
différents.
3 different
Nous
airports
avons prendre des
to get
mesures
home.
comme nous avons porté les wipes et
We brought wipes with
minimiser,
us and
nos
minimized
interactions avec les 2
interactions
autres
with the 2
passagers.
other passengers on the plane.
Selon les décisions pour la frontière, c'est
respect to the
clair
border decision,
que les mesures
clearly,
aux frontières
measures at the border
aident à réduire le nombre
and measures to reduce
des personnes qui
the number
peuvent
of people
avoir COVID-19.
who could
Alors, c'est essentiel
have
que
COVID-19.
notre gouvernement
Our government
négocie un accord
has
pour,
to negotiate an agreement
juste pour le temps que cette pandémie est une menace aux
while this
Canadiens.
pandemic continues
Au
to
même temps
threaten
qu'on
Canadians.
assure que
At the same time,
on peut
we have
avoir
to
la
ensure that we
transportation
can have a free flow
des produits essentiels,
of essential products, goods and services
entre deux pays. Alors,
between
ça,
our
c'est
2 countries.
l'équilibre qu'on doit assurer que
We have
nous
to
allons
ensure
avoir.
this.
Sure. So as it relates to the issue of measures at the border, obviously these measures can do help to reduce the number of cases of COVID-19. It's essential that as long as those measures will lead to fewer cases, that they are put in place in a way that continues to allow important goods and services to flow back and forth between our 2 countries. That is the balance that we're certainly going to be looking for.
Next question on the line.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from Hélène Buzetti de Le Devoir. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Oui, bonjour,
Good morning, Mr. Scheer.
J'aimerais faire suite à la question
I would
de
like
ma
to follow up
collègue.
on my
On a
colleague's
vu les
question.
photos de
We saw
l'avion, il est
pictures of the
petit,
plane.
donc tout le
It's
monde
very
était un
small,
peu collé
so
les
everyone was
uns sur
kind
les
of
autres.
stuck together,
Ne
close together.
craignez-vous pas, en tant que politicien, de
As a
donner
politician,
l'impression que
do
vous
not
imposez des règles aux
think
autres,
you're
mais que vous ne les
setting rules for
appliquez
other
pas à
people, that
vous-même?
you're not
Pas du
respecting
tout,
yourself?
c'est pas une,
Answer, not at all.
Une image
That's not an accurate picture.
Bien fondée. C'est pas comme nous sommes une sur
It's
l'autre.
not
Ça,
as
c'est
if we were on top of
complètement
each other. That wasn't the case.
That's just completely false. The idea that we were packed one on top of each other is just ridiculous. We had a choice to make. I would either fly back and forth multiple times between Regina and Ottawa between now and the end of June, or fly the family through several different airports on commercial flights and all the risks that are associated with that, or to take a flight that the government was offering between Vancouver and Ottawa anyway. And so we decided to take a flight with only 2 other people. We took great steps to ensure that we minimize our interactions with each other. My wife brought wipes along with her. We made sure that we were not speaking moistly on each other. We kept our distance. We kept to ourselves, and we made that decision based on the alternatives.
Et pour revenir donc concernant les séances de Parlement, la Chambre des communes nous a dit il y a une semaine déjà que ça prendrait 4 semaines avant d'installer le Parlement virtuel. Donc, une semaine écoulée, cette semaine, ça ne siège pas. Donc, déjà, la semaine prochaine, on va être à 2 semaines de l'établissement de séances virtuelles. Pourquoi tenez-vous à ce point à instaurer des séances en personne? L'argument que ça pourrait mettre en péril la santé des travailleurs
endangering the health of workers at the Parliament.
À votre avis?
Je suis confiant qu'on peut
I'm confident that we can find a way to protect the health of all members and of the employees of the House of Commons.
Nous avons montré
we have shown that we can do so. We've done it twice.
C'est essentiel que nous avons des meilleurs résultats pour les Canadiens.
To have the best possible results for Canadians. Thanks to the work of all the opposition parties and the support they've given, and the fact that the government had to negotiate with the other parties to pass their legislation, we have a better program for Canadians.
On ne peut pas hésiter pour 4 semaines pour avoir les séances virtuelles.
We can't wait for 4 weeks to have virtual sittings. We agree with them. We're going to ensure that we can use new technologies to offer virtual sittings. But at the same time,
les sessions normales de la Chambre des communes.
We should also have normal parliamentary sittings, and we have to ensure
faire les bonnes décisions.
We're going to make the best possible decisions, to have the best programs for Canadians. It's essential to have support, debate, and analysis that MPs offer.
Prochaine question au téléphone.
Next question from the phone.
Merci.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Louis Bloin de Radio-Canada. La parole est à vous. Please go ahead.
Bonjour, M. Scheer.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer.
Pierre Poilievre
Your colleague, Mr. Poilievre, accused the government of having closed down Canada's economy. How much time should it take to reopen the Canadian economy? Answer.
Notre première constatation, c'est
our first consideration is the health of Canadians. That's our first objective today. We have to ensure that we can reduce the number of Canadians that contract COVID-19. At the same time, we realize that the economic impacts are catastrophic for many families across the country. We must ensure that the government takes action not only today for people who are affected by these measures, but also that they have a plan to revitalize our economy post-pandemic. And this is why we have to have parliamentary sittings. We have to ensure that we're making the right decisions for our country at the right time with the correct measures. The Parliament will insist on finding the right time to relax measures, to allow our companies to reopen. So that's another reason why we need debate at the House of Commons. We need to have questions to hold the government to account.
Il y a la France, par exemple,
France, for example,
qui a évoqué un relâchement progressif
has talked about a progressive easing of measures for isolation.
Si les choses continuent à
They've
s'apaiser.
mentioned a date in
Alors,
May
est-ce que
if
pour vous,
things
par
continue to
exemple,
improve.
l'annuler, ça pourrait représenter
Could you
un
think
moment
this could be the right time,
réaliste
a realistic
pour
time
peut-être relâcher le confinement
to
tranquillement?
perhaps gradually ease up on isolation?
Ça dépend
Answer,
sur
this depends
le numéro des personnes
on the
avec
number of
le
cases
virus
with the
et
virus
la capacité de notre système de
and
santé.
the capacity of our healthcare system. These are
Beaucoup des
key
experts médicaux
elements. Many experts
disent
say
qu'un grand pourcentage des
that a
Canadiens
high
va
percentage of
avoir
Canadians
le virus.
will
Mais c'est
contract the
essentiel
virus.
assurer que
We have to
notre
ensure
système de santé
that our healthcare system
peut être là pour les
can
Canadiens au
accommodate
temps que
these cases
nous allons avoir une augmentation
when there is a spike.
des personnes. Alors, on doit baser les décisions comme
We have to
ça
base
sur
such
les
decisions
faits,
on the facts.
l'évidence. Et on peut avoir les bonnes discussions.
And we can have good
poser des
discussions.
questions
We
au
can
gouvernement,
ask
on peut
the
demander
government
sur
questions.
quels
We can ask
critères
them
ils
what
basent
criteria
leurs
they're
décisions
basing
dans
their
la
decisions
Chambre
on
des communes,
at the House
avec
of Commons,
le débat, avec le
with
scrutin.
debate,
Ça, c'est le rôle de l'opposition dans
through
les moments
votes, and that
comme
is the
ça.
role of the
On va
opposition and the government.
assurer
We're going
que
to
les
ensure
décisions seront
that
prendre au bon
the decision will be
moment.
made at the right
Si on
time.
a le débat rigoureux, on peut
If we have
assurer
rigorous
qu'on
debate,
va avoir les meilleurs résultats.
we'll ensure that we'll have the best possible results.
Now, take question in the room. Julie Van Dusen, CBC.
Hi, Julie Van Dusen, CBC. So you're talking about bringing MPs back, respecting health rules, if Parliament sits and so on. But I need clarification on this Challenger flight. It doesn't sound like you were respecting the rules. You're in a flight with that has 9 seats. You've got yourself, your 5 kids. You're not wearing masks. And how can you be keeping 2 meters apart? And you say, well, we would have had to go through 3 airports. Fine, but you don't normally hitch a ride on the Challenger, so maybe you would have had to go through 3 airports. Can you tell me why it's okay for you to ignore the rules, but it's not okay for the rest of Canadians?
Well, as I said, we were faced with a choice between, we were in Regina for March break when the music stopped, and that's where our family had been based out of. With the recall of Parliament on Saturday and with future sittings coming up for the rest of the spring session, we had a choice to make. When the government indicated that there was a flight going from Vancouver to Ottawa anyway, and that there was space available, that's the choice we made instead of flying through multiple airports on other types of flights where there likely would have been many other passengers as well. That's the decision we made. We took long disinfectant wipes. We didn't interact with each other. We made sure that we weren't speaking moistly on each other, kept to ourselves. The other 2 passengers got off the plane first. Our family left. So, that was a decision we made with the best, with the choices in front of us.
So one of your MPs tweeted, and then the tweet was removed, Mark Dalton, saying that since a lot of these people that are dying in this COVID crisis are in homes for seniors and so on, why not open the economy? Now, did you speak to him? What do you make of what he said?
Well, I understand that he's removed the tweet, and he's indicated and he's addressed his comments. Obviously, our thoughts and our concern first and foremost are with anyone who's been affected by this disease, with people who are cut off and isolated from their family because they're not able to visit or to receive visitors in the homes that they live in. My own mother lived in a long-term assisted care facility for several years at the end of her life, and I know how difficult it is to have members of one's family in long-term care facilities to begin with, and with the added anxiety of this virus affecting people in care homes specifically, I can only imagine the heartache that many families across the country are going through. So our focus will be to continue to make sure that they get the help they need, and that our response to this pandemic is done in such a way that our healthcare system can manage the number of cases that we have, and that we get through this as quickly as possible.
Hi there, Rachel Haynes from CTV National News. Dr. Theresa Tam has said repeatedly that you should be avoiding all non-essential travel. So why was it essential travel for your family to come with you to Ottawa? And will you be paying back and reimbursing the cost of this flight, as the other option would have been commercial anyways?
Well, as a point, the option was to fly through the House of Commons travel service or to take the flight that the government was offering from Vancouver to Ottawa. So, you can feel free to continue to analyze this. I will point out that on Saturday, I asked the Prime Minister a question. On March 12th, I asked the government about whether or not they had taken steps to procure new ventilators for Canada. On Saturday, almost 30 days later, I asked how many ventilators the government had procured. The Prime Minister on Saturday indicated that it would still be weeks before a single new ventilator was obtained under their procurement strategy. So those are the types of things that I'm focusing on. We're going to continue to hold this government to account for its response. Canadians are concerned about the capacity of our healthcare system, about the security of our supply chain. We have reports now of the government having supply chains that depend on Chinese production at a time when there are many questions have been raised about the quality of those goods and our ability to safeguard them. So those are the things that we're going to be continuing to focus on so that we get better results for Canadians.
That really did not answer my question at all.
It did, actually.
Because I would really like to know why it was essential for your family to come. Will you be reimbursing the cost of that?
So I did address that. The House of Commons travel system would have covered the flights anyway. The government offered the flight that was going from Vancouver to Regina anyway. Vancouver to Ottawa. Parliament being recalled to pass much needed benefits for Canadians, wage subsidies, is obviously essential in this time. It's essential that our democratic
but why was it essential for your family to come?
Let's finish. It's essential for our government's response to be as good as it possibly can be, and the opposition plays a role in ensuring that happens. And as I said, the choice was to either fly back and forth multiple times, which didn't make sense to me, or travel through multiple airports on other flights as well. And this seemed, on a flight with only 2 other people, it seemed to be the best decision.
But why did your family have to come? Why was that essential?
Because, as I said, the alternative would be for me to fly back and forth multiple times before the end of the session. I felt that we're going to be based here now for the rest of the session. We've, like every other family, we've drastically reduced our leaving the house and other types of travel in order to be here for work, the essential work that Parliament is going to be doing over the next few weeks and months. We made that decision.
We'll now take a last question on the phone. Opérateur au téléphone.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from David Ekin with Global News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi, thanks very much. And I hope, Mr. Scheer, you might stick around for a few additional questions. I don't know if you've got anywhere urgent to go. I've got a couple more important questions about the oil and gas sector. We're seeing a report that there may be a liquidity bailout for some firms in the oil and gas sector, something worth $20 to $30 billion. Just wondering if your party would support that sort of liquidity bailout and whether you would support the government of Canada taking an equity position in Canadian energy firms.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been pushing the government to have some kind of a response to the crisis in the oil and gas sector for weeks now. Over 3 weeks ago, Bill Morneau told the Senate that a package for the oil and gas sector was only hours or days away, but not weeks. Well, it's been weeks, and the hardship continues to roll through Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC. So many families have been affected by the downturn. The double whammy of having a government for the past 4 years cancel pipeline projects, put hurdles in front of the industry to prevent big projects from going ahead, and now this crisis leading to a crash in commodity prices and further loss of jobs. In general, we have called for some specific measures for the government to respond to this in terms of backstopping loans to address the liquidity issue. Obviously, when governments take equity positions in companies, it has a lot of consequences. We believe that we should try other measures to ensure the viability of our oil and gas sector. But we'll take a look at any serious proposal. We'll take a look at any proposal the government brings forward. And that's why it's essential that we have these types of ongoing accountability sessions, so that when they do have a program that's made available, we can analyze it. We can make sure it's getting help to the people that need it, that it's doing what it needs to do. We can hold them to account and question them. And as we've shown with the wage subsidy bill, we can make improvements where there are shortcomings. So that's a further reason for ongoing accountability sessions in the House of Commons to get us through this crisis.
And just to follow up then, I guess, I think the concern, as I understand it, speaking to people in Alberta and Saskatchewan for that matter, is that the corporations just won't be around, that they, because of the decline in oil prices, the decline in share prices, there's a great risk of many foreign takeovers because these companies are so cheap, and or that some of these Canadian companies will do what others have done and relocate to Houston or other jurisdictions. And so, would you be in favor of banning any foreign takeover of a major Canadian energy player for a certain period of time until this crisis is over? Should foreign takeovers be banned at this point in time?
Well, I will point out that there are some countries around the world. I believe Australia has put in new restrictions in terms of foreign investment and takeovers of domestic companies. Obviously, we want to have a long-term view of our Canadian companies and recognizing that some of them may be particularly vulnerable in this moment will prompt legitimate questions about what the role of government is in the short term. As I said, initially what we need to do is we need to get the package put together that the government promised was coming. That's step one. We've called for additional measures that we believe will help many oil and gas companies get through the short-term aspect of this crisis, and then any kinds of discussions about long-term proposals or major changes to the Investment Canada Act or the regime around foreign investment. We need to see those proposals. We need to analyze them. We need to hold them up to scrutiny because we've already shown that we can make improvements. We can fix gaps in the government's legislation. We've shown that twice already. There's an essential role to Parliament to play to make sure that we get better results for Canadians.
Operator, next question on the line.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from Andrew Lawton with True North. La parole est à vous. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has said that Alberta is not going to wait for Health Canada approval on drugs that have been approved by what he called peer jurisdictions like the FDA in the United States, the European Union, Australia. Do you think this is something that provinces are justified doing if there is no urgent approval on these things from Health Canada?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly the decision for every provincial government to make. We've long pointed out that there are regulatory hurdles here in Canada that whether for any number of products go through rigorous testing in other jurisdictions that we have an equivalent level of scrutiny for, and often Canada is the last to get drugs for individuals or products for other types of industries as well. So that's a decision for every provincial government to make if that's a road they want to go down, if they have confidence in those other systems. I think obviously there's a need for quick reaction. There could very well be much better outcomes depending on a variety of choices and models that different provinces adopt. And I think what's essential is that when a province finds a way of doing things that works, that reduces the number of cases, that slows the growth in the number of cases, that we're able to replicate what works.
So just to confirm, you're not saying that provinces are in the wrong if they go around Health Canada then on these approvals?
Well, I'm saying that that if there is a legal mechanism for them to make those decisions, then that will be up to every individual premier.
We'll have time for one last question on the phone.
Thank you. Merci. Our next question is from Stephanie Levitz with the Canadian Press. La parole est à vous. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Could you clarify or perhaps elaborate then on what your proposal is to the government for the resumption of the House of Commons potentially on Monday? Do you want back to business entirely? You say an agreement is needed with all the parties. So what's on the table right now in terms of the return of the House?
Mm-hmm. Well, as you probably know, If there is no agreement reached, then the House of Commons will return normally on Monday. We can all agree that having 338 members of Parliament come back to the chamber is not optimal. So what we're proposing to the government is to have a reduced number of members of Parliament from each party in proportion to the results of the last election and in proportion to the normal standing in the chamber, a representation from each caucus, to have regular accountability sessions, to be able to ask the types of questions that we're asking on Saturday about the number of ventilators that were promised, and it turns out the government hasn't received any, about the gaps in their emergency response benefits, about the gaps in their wage subsidy legislation. So on a go-forward basis, we believe that we should be having regular, frequent accountability sessions in the House of Commons with a mechanism for the government to introduce emergency legislation as needed to deal with this pandemic. That is our proposal. We are open. We are hoping that we can find an agreement in a collaborative way, recognizing the priorities of every opposition party, including the government's need to react and respond to this crisis. So I've written the Prime Minister a letter. We've presented what we believe would be an appropriate work plan for the coming days and weeks. And anything that we do in the chamber can certainly be augmented and added to by virtual sittings to allow for a broader participation of members of Parliament from across the country.
And as a follow-up, I'd like to ask about the World Health Organization. A lot of controversy around that body in recent days. What is your position on the extent to which they can be trusted as perhaps the global arbiter of how this pandemic is playing out and what countries should or should not be doing?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I'll say that I'm disappointed that World Health Organization officials have declined the invitation from the House of Commons Health Committee to testify. This government is basing their decisions on the World Health Organization's advice. They are saying that they are partners in this with the World Health Organization. And we have very serious concerns. Many concerns have been raised about the accuracy of the World Health Organization's data, the influence that China has on the World Health Organization. There was the incident where an official refused to answer a question about Taiwan's participation in the World Health Organization. We're very concerned about that. That's why we want to be able to have those officials at committee so they can answer questions, they can explain why decisions were made, why advice was given, and on what basis that advice was given. So we have a lot of reasons to be demanding this type of oversight. There have been many examples of missteps and missed opportunities that got us here. We want to look forward and make sure that those mistakes are not repeated by this government, that those opportunities are not missed by this government, and the best way to do that is to hold them to account in the House of Commons so that we get better results for Canadians. That is the goal of this exercise, is to get Canada through this crisis as best as possible. We want the government to get this right. We want them to make the right decisions at the right time. That's what this exercise is all about.
This concludes our press conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, everyone. The conference has now ended. Please disconnect your lines at this time, and we thank you for your participation.